But I come to serve you notice tonight as a witness. And I'm not an old man, but I have lived to see. People think they're so big they don't need nobody, including God. Thinking they can just walk over people, boast about I don't need nobody. But there's going to come a time in your life when you need God. So I offer you tonight a better solution. I was talking to someone today from overseas. And they was telling me how their life was miserable. They began to tell me, how they hated themselves. And I told them, I said, getting born again is the solution. Then they responded and said, when I was a Christian, my life was just as worse then as it is now. You know, Lord had already spoke to me while I was chatting with this person and said, now, they're going to say some things that you don't agree with, and it may even make you upset. He said, but it's not for you to show your frustration in what they're going to say. He said, your job is to show compassion and take time to explain to them where they're wrong. When this person told me that their life was more miserable when they was a Christian as a sinner, and I'm texting, because this is overseas, I said, that's a lie from the pits of hell. I said, no way your life can be more miserable as a Christian and a sinner. Because the Bible said the way of a transgressor is hard. But I began to let them know, I said, it's a difference between being born again and going to church. See, this is the problem. We have people who are going to church, but they not delivered. And you can't walk straddle the fence. You can't walk with one leg in the world and suppose you ain't got one leg in the church, because if you got one in the world, you all in the world. Either you in or you out. I said, so when you tell me that your life was more miserable as a Christian, I said, well, I've been serving the Lord some 30 years, and it keeps getting sweeter as the day go by with me. Now, let me put a bullet point there. Because that was a time when I used to hear the saints say that, and I didn't understand it. Every day with Jesus, sweeter than the day before. And I was a young Christian. And it seemed like the trials was getting harder. And I'm trying to figure out, can I just talk real? And I'm trying to figure out, how does it get sweeter when the trials get harder? But now I understand. I had an auntie who was a member here. Many of you all remember her. Sister Woods, Sister Weta Woods. She used to have a saying. She said, after you go through for so long, your trials will become like water off of a duck's back. Now, if you know anything about a duck back repels water. It rolls off. So when the saints would say every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before and I didn't get it, it's because I hadn't reached a certain point. What you really find out is, yes, the trials get harder, but the victories get sweeter. I can't get a response on that. The trials do get harder, but the victories become even sweeter. Greater the trial, greater the blessing. But the point is, in order for you to truly see that, you have to get to the point to where your mind is made up. You have to be willing. I was watching a commentary today on a football player, and he was trying to pep up his team. They was getting ready to play. And they was playing for a divisional championship game or whatever. And he began to tell him, he said, you know what? If you all want to win, you have to be willing to die today. He said, I am. When I heard him say that, I said, that's how it's supposed to be in the Christian race. See, the problem is some people are only willing to go so far. They're not willing to go all the way. But in your mind, and hear me very clearly what I'm finna say. You know, you hear people get up and say big words like, for Christ I live and for Christ I die. And that's fine. But Pastor used to tell us, he said, you don't trouble to trouble you. But let me say this. Technically speaking, in your mind and in your heart, you have to be willing to die for this. Now let me explain what I mean, because see, some of you looking at death as a natural death. The Bible said we die daily. Though this outward man perish, we're renewed day by day. You have to be willing to die to the point to where if nobody understands you, to where if everybody criticizes you, to where everybody ostracizes you, to where everybody tenderize you, to where you get to the point to where you may have to walk alone. When you get to the point where you feel like you don't have one friend, are you still willing to tell people how good Jesus is? You ought to be clapping your hands. See, you got to get to, see, that's when it gets sweeter. I'm going to show you. Until you can get to that point, many of the great treasures that God has for you, you'll never receive them. The Bible said they that love God, he will not withhold any good thing. The sky's not even the limit. I said some things here last time I was up, and I want to reiterate on what I said, because sometimes you say things and people can perceive one thing and that's not really what you're saying. I made a comment. I said, before I leave here, I'm going to live like a rich man. I never said I wanted to be rich. There's a difference. I've never wanted to be rich. I've never desired to own $1 million or to possess $1 million. You can live rich without being rich. The Bible said the blessing of the Lord make it rich. He will make you rich and add no sorrow. In other words, what I was conveying was living comfortably. A rich person basically has everything they want. What's the difference in me living comfortably and having everything I want? It doesn't have to be on the same scale as a rich person. I don't have to have a mansion. I don't have to have 5 or 6 bedrooms when it's only me, my wife, and my son who will eventually be leaving. I don't need 6 bedrooms. So where I desire to be and be comfortable, that can still be living like a rich person. But let me say this, and I'm quoting this. Let's go quickly. Well, no, let me slow down. Let's deal with this wages of sin. The wages of sin is death. But the gift of God. Somebody say the gift of God. The gift of God is salvation. That's the greatest gift you could ever receive. Even though Christmas is one of the most joyful times of the year, it's also one of the most depressing times of the year. Because some people realize they're not going to get the things that they desire. Some have lost loved ones during this time, and it brings back memories. But let me say this. Christmas is not about what you receive. As I was forced in, I was talking to a friend of mine. He asked me, how do we celebrate Christmas? I told him, I said, we've been taught that if we have children, we should strive to get them something. I said, because we don't want those little children waking up not having anything. I said, so we believe in giving gifts. But, you know, we were taught at a certain degree that Christmas is for children. You know, where you get a certain age, you shouldn't be necessarily looking for nothing. I'm not going to feel bad if my wife or my son don't give me anything. And don't get me wrong, I have a very generous family, and they always strive to get me something for every occasion. But I tell them, Where my son at? I tell him, I said, there he is on the camera right there. Come on, give him a great big hand tonight. I love my son. He's a good son. He's never given me 1 ounce of trouble. But look, I tell him he works. Amen. He's not broke. But I tell him, I said, look, I said, y'all don't have to try to give me anything if need. I said, you don't have to. I said, now I'm a man. Now, if anybody gonna be able to do it, I said, I should be. I said, so don't put yourself through no strain. But they're very liberal. I went in my room the other day, and there was $40 sitting on my nightstand, and I knew my wife didn't put it there. I knew she did. Well, Lord done did great things if she did. She generous. So I immediately called my son. I said, AJ, did you put this money on my dresser? He said, first he tried to play it off. He said, did I do that? Gonna do a Steve Urkel on me.